Parent Inclusion, We Are All Family, is a PowerPoint and a presentation that I prepared for People for Education, an organization in Toronto which does advocacy work for public education. Their conference, Making Connections, was a conference on education issues held in November of 2007. In this piece on parent inclusion, I was really trying to answer some of their questions about how we create more of a space and a presence for parents in schools. The presentation drew on research done at Princess Alexandra Community School in Saskatoon, which was funded by the Dr. Sterling McDowell Foundation for Research into Teaching. What this particular piece tried to do was really look at how we create a more integral place for parents on school landscapes. Some of the work in the PowerPoint plays around with the differences between parent involvement and parent engagement, and it looks at the research in these areas to examine what truly does make a difference to children's learning and children's outcomes in schools. 4 particular pieces are implications of that research. In the PowerPoint, I present the notion that educators are guest hosts on school landscapes. When educators enter communities, they're often outsiders. They often live in communities other than the one in which they're teaching. As educators move into a community, they often claim that ground of the school, and in doing so, they make decisions about policy and about practice. And then they inform parents and community members of the decisions that they make. In positioning educators as guest hosts, we begin to think differently about our role as educators in schools. When we're first guests, we have to think about whose space it is and how do we act as a guest within that space. How do we learn from the people who are there? How do we hear their stories so that we understand the community? And how do we see ourselves positioned as learners alongside them and from them, not just imposers of policy and practice? As hosts on that landscape, though, we work in the building all day, every day, and we need to create warm and inviting spaces so that parents and community members feel comfortable coming to see us in that space. Secondly, I think one of the things we have to pay attention to are differences between schooling and education. Educators' main concerns are schooling, student achievement, and other educational outcomes. Parents have a much broader conception of their children's learning, and they focus on the education of that child in schooling and outside of it. So I think another important piece for us is to really ask parents what their hopes and dreams for their children are. How do they see that lifelong goal of growth and development for their children, and how can schooling then support their movement toward those goals rather than preempt it? A third piece to think hard about is what happens off the school landscape. So often when we're educators in school, we talk about how many parents came to parent-teacher conferences, how many parents were at the last school council meeting, whether parents are signing the forms we're sending home to them and returning them, and the focus is within the walls of the school. A lot of learning takes place in homes and off the school landscape, and it's been an area that we haven't paid very much attention to. When we look at works such as the work of Gerardo Lopez in the United States, when he works with Latino and Latina families, we learn from him that parents have really high expectations for their children, even though they're parents that maybe never set foot on school property. So we're missing a large piece of our possibility of engaging parents when we're not really attending to the things that they're doing at home or the things that they want for their own children. A fourth piece is that we're often worried about connecting parents to us as educators. We think of the ways that we can build relationships with them, a really important piece. And yet, how do we attend also to connecting parents with each other, to connecting parents with other families and other community members so they feel a stronger presence in the school? As we think about that concept of engagement, then, we have to think about who we are in that story. We have to think about who parents are. We have to begin to think about what happens within our building. And we have to begin to think about our work happening in homes and places within the community, as well as within the school.